So today, all around Australia and around the world, we gather to mark International Workers' Memorial Day. We gather to remember the West Australians in particular who have lost their lives, who have been injured, or people who have experienced serious illness because of their work. April the 28th, all around the world, is recognised as a day of mourning and a day of remembrance for working people, for unions, for family and friends, for religious, political and community leaders to come together to remember and to mourn. But of course we don't just come here today to remember our fallen comrades. We also come together to commit ourselves to continuing the fight, to improve workplace safety and to prevent further workplace injury and death. Or as we say on this day, we come to remember the dead and to fight for the living. And as we gather this year, all around the world and in Western Australia, we are rightfully concerned about the impact of COVID-19 on working people, particularly for those that work in the health industry, for people who are performing essential work in the economy, retail workers, aged care workers, teachers, other frontline employees. And we'll hear this morning from a health worker and HSU member, Cheryl Hamill, about how they are representing their members through this difficult time of COVID-19. But of course, we also remain focused on many other issues that are affecting working people in Western Australia. It's worth noting that in this financial year so far, there's been 14 workplace deaths and another 14 that are still under investigation. We also are dealing with the re-emergence of silicosis, a disease that we once thought was eradicated, and now we find that in WA in the last 18 months there's been 9 cases that have been diagnosed. There are ongoing issues that we need to remain vigilant about to make our workplaces safe and to reduce the incidence of workplace death. And because of that, we also remain focused on updating WA's safety laws. In WA, we've got some of the most outdated safety legislation in the country, and we applaud the work of the state Labor government in reviewing those laws and introducing a bill that will modernise laws in this state and make them appropriate for what workplaces look like today. That bill still has to make its way through the Legislative Council in Parliament before it becomes law, but we hope that will happen soon. It's a vital piece of legislation. It's vital that we improve our laws to provide a strong minimum standards. And we say that those minimum standards should include rights and recognition for elected safety representatives. Those laws should also include tough penalties for employers that do the wrong thing. And that's why we support industrial manslaughter laws and we support significant financial penalties for employers that do the wrong thing. I want to particularly thank and acknowledge the families who have worked with us to advocate to bring in better laws in this state. Many of the families who have lost a loved one, I know many of you have told your stories many times to politicians, to the media, to parliamentary inquiries. And I know that recounting those stories is often difficult and painful for you to do. But your powerful and personal testimony has been so valuable to our efforts to win stronger laws to protect workers. It's contributed significantly to our cause, and we're greatly indebted to you for your patience, for your persistence, and for sharing those most personal memories with us. One of the things that strikes me every time I speak with the families of deceased workers is how it's clear that for them, better laws is a fundamental part of delivering justice. And at the moment, they reflect our system fails to do that for them. Family members have told me over and over that after a tragic death of a loved one, and then an inevitable lengthy process of investigation and maybe a prosecution, that often they're left feeling as though justice hasn't been served. And because of that, it's much harder to find closure. It's easy to see why families feel that way, when fines of just $30,000 might be the result of a preventable death of a worker. Clearly, that's an inadequate fine, and this needs to change. For too long, our laws have sent the wrong message to those who want to cut corners, that might prevent deaths at work. For too long, the penalty for a workplace death has been less than the cost of compliance. So we need strong laws to ensure that workplace fatalities are not just seen as another cost of doing business. We need strong workplace laws and tough penalties to prevent workplace deaths and injuries. So as we look forward to working to improve the legislation in WA, we need to ensure that we remain resolute to fight for better rights for working people, and better rights for unions to represent their members in workplaces. We live in extraordinary times at the moment. We face unusual health challenges and safety challenges for our members and for workers in their workplaces as a result of COVID-19. But our job in the movement has always been to pursue safe workplaces for working people. We need a number of things to achieve this. We need strong laws, but we need strong unions, and we need strong occupational health and safety representatives in workplaces if we're to achieve that. And we also know that as a movement, we cannot achieve these things alone, that we need to work with our friends in politics, in the community, in government, in all different forms to be able to win safer workplaces. So for that reason, today is an important time that we come together, union movement, with government, with community, with religious leaders, to be able to argue about the need for stronger laws and safer workplaces. Today, on this International Day of Mourning, we remember the dead, but we vow to continue to fight for the living. I now wanted to introduce Cheryl Hamill, who's the President of the Health Services Union in WA, to give us her perspective about safety on the front line at this time of COVID-19. Cheryl.
We're pausing today, as we do annually, in global solidarity across the union movement to remember the dead and reflect on our fight for the living. There are perils in all workplaces. In this year of coronavirus, we have a common threat that spans industries and occupations. The threat can only be met by expression of the values that unions live by daily: a communal response, a focus on safety, respect for those speaking up on safety issues, and solidarity in standing together to demand systems, laws and processes that protect us and our fellow workers. I'm speaking to you as a representative of the Health Services Union, but we understand that this pandemic has put all workers on the front line. As wonderful as our health sector employees are, so too are the shop assistants, cleaners, teachers, child and aged care workers, police, prison officers, and those in food, transport, distribution and manufacturing workplaces. We are all critical to the Australian coronavirus fight, as are those in agriculture, higher education, cultural, construction and mining industries in maintaining the health and functioning of our society. Health workers have historically lower rates of workplace deaths compared to other injuries, but very high rates of workplace injuries. Coronavirus has the potential to be deadly for those working in health. Recent statistics from the UK reveal 106 deaths in healthcare workers to the 22nd of April. Affected in order of frequency were nurses, support workers, doctors, and workers in administration managerial roles, paramedics, transport staff, porters, housekeepers, cleaners, midwives, other allied health professionals, a dentist, a pharmacist, a radiographer and a receptionist. The numbers of Australian workers who contracted COVID-19 in the workplace are not yet available. Victoria reported 165 healthcare workers had been infected as at the 26th of April, though it is not clear how many contracted the virus in the workplace. Despite an apparent low level of community transmission and a welcoming flattening of the curve, infection in health workplaces is still clearly of concern until vaccines and effective treatments are found. Health workers need the backing of strong legislation and regulations to protect us in the workplace. We need agencies such as WorkSafe to be active in protecting the lives of health workers through a pandemic. We and our families need protections such as access to workers' compensation if we contract COVID-19 in the workplace. This is a time to defend and develop appropriate workplace protections and to ensure justice for all health workers. The impact of coronavirus goes beyond infection. It has a disproportionate impact on people in insecure work, for those who fall between the gaps with the JobKeeper program, such as those in the cultural industry, and on women who have both work and home or family caring responsibilities. Mental health impacts are significant workplace risks. Coronavirus has disturbed and disrupted all aspects of our community and family lives. We do, however, also have to keep our focus on the industries that sadly have been and continue to be the biggest contributor to workplace deaths. The agriculture, forestry and fishing, transport, postal and warehousing, construction, manufacturing and mining sectors are in the unenviable leaderboard for deaths at work. Some workplace deaths are high profile and evoke a strong community response. I'm thinking here of the recent loss of 4 Victorian police officers. But every person who is killed at work is a tragedy for the family left behind and their colleagues. We don't need workplace heroes who triumph against the odds. We need quality, safe workplaces and safe work so that every worker returns to their family at the end of the day, uninjured and whole. Today, we remember the dead. We acknowledge in particular the challenges all workers face with coronavirus, and we commit to continuing the fight for the living. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, for that address this morning. I now wanted to introduce Father Chris Bedding, who will lead us through the memorial service this morning. Father Chris has been with us many years for International Workers Memorial Day, and we're really delighted that he's with us again this year. Father Chris.
We acknowledge that we gather today on Whadjuk Noongar country and we pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and we give thanks for the preservation of story and culture. And I also acknowledge that today there are people joining us from many different faiths and worldviews. And although I'm a Christian priest, our focus today is on our shared humanity and the inherent dignity of each person, particularly workers. And so I acknowledge with pain that churches and religious groups, including my own, have failed to protect vulnerable people, and that we too stand culpable alongside governments and corporations for injury and death. We know that there are so many people who can't be here today, who would like to be here today to honour those that they have lost. So I'd like to encourage you as you watch this, whether you're watching live or you're watching it after the fact, to go to the comments thread underneath this live stream and maybe place the name, just the first name of the person whose memory you wish to honour today. Or if you feel you're able, you may wish to place a picture or a short story or anecdote about that person to honour their memory and to give thanks for all that they were and that they gave, and also to share in solidarity with those who are joining us around Western Australia and indeed around the country and the world. It's not quite the same as laying a wreath, I know, but we can keep their memory alive and continue to work to protect others in their honour. Today, I'd like to celebrate the witness of 2 health workers. They were midwives, actually, 2 women named Shipra and Pua, who participated in the earliest known instance of civil disobedience. Pharaoh, you see, was worried about the growing number of Israelites who were his slaves. When you act as midwives to the Hebrew women, he said, if it is a boy, kill him, but if it is a girl, she shall live. But we learn in Exodus chapter 1 of the Jewish scriptures that Shipra and Pua would have no part of this. How could they? They had committed themselves to bringing life into the world. Why would they abandon this vocation to start slaughtering babies of their own people? When they were questioned by Pharaoh, they had a cunning response. "Oh, these Hebrew women are so vigorous, they give birth before the midwife reaches them." And Pharaoh, being not just a man, but a rich, powerful man, knew nothing about the complexities of childbirth and not enough about these people who were his slaves, so he didn't know that the midwives were having him on. So the boys were able to live. And one of those boys grew up to be Moses, who led his people out of slavery and into freedom. Every day, workers like Shipra and Pua, health workers, workers in so many contexts, make tough ethical decisions about what is safe and what is just. And sometimes they take risks to help others, and sometimes they take risks to serve their boss's needs. It's really hard to stick your neck out to say something is wrong or dangerous, and it's easy to burn yourself out for your students or your patients or your clients or your boss. But we look to heroes like Shipra and Pua, these righteous women who, even though they were slaves, found a way to creatively protect life, to support one another, and to practice lives built on justice. So with a strong moral framework and the solidarity of comrades, workers can resist evil and do good. Today we remember those workers who have been injured or killed in their workplace, and at this time we particularly think of those workers who are at risk here and around the world, but who are still united with us in the bonds of humanity. So I'm going to invite you now to pray with me, or use this time for your reflection, remembering that we don't pray to change God, we pray that God will change us. May it be our sincere hope today that we can change the systems and structures that lead to death and injury, that we can resist unsafe and unjust instructions, and that we can hold lives sacred in our workplaces, in our society, and in our world. So in response to my words, "we will remember," I invite you to respond, "we will fight back." We will remember. We will fight back. O God, you stand with workers who are exploited, exhausted, harassed, and unsafe. You are father to the fatherless and friend of the poor. When rules are ignored and equipment is uninspected, we will remember. We will fight back. O God, you are the source of all healing and wholeness. Pour out your Spirit on all who have become sick in their workplaces this year. Give courage and strength to their families. When people are abused and their welfare forgotten, we will remember. We will fight back. O God, you give life to all and you do not desert us, even in death. Your heart grieves with us for those we remember today who have lost their lives in their workplaces. You cry tears with us and share in our pain. When their memory is sidelined and when lessons are not learned, we will remember. We will fight back. O God, you taught us that true power is in service of others. We give you thanks for those who serve in governance and management, who cherish workers and value their safety. We praise you for elected officials who care for and protect workers. When boards and bosses neglect their responsibilities, we will remember. We will fight back. O God, you have bound yourself in solidarity to humanity, coming among us in the form of a worker who collectivized and organized and paid the price for his rebellion. Pour out your blessing on all those who advocate and work for justice. When they are silenced and disparaged, we will remember. We will fight back. Eternal God, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echo throughout the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all creative beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. I invite those few who are here to turn and face the memorial, and those who are joining us online to share as we place wreaths in front of the memorial. And if you are joining us online, I encourage you to perhaps place a comment or a picture expressing your tribute today. I invite you now to a time of silence as we honour the lives of those we have lost. We also acknowledge today those who have come here earlier to place their tributes, those who are unable to be here today, and whose tribute is nevertheless just as powerful and meaningful. I'll pray now for a blessing on everyone who is joining us. Go forth into the world in peace. Be of good courage. Hold fast to that which is good. Render to no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the afflicted. Give honour to all. And the blessing of God be upon you today and always, in solidarity with one another and with workers around the world. Amen.